I think we'll get started and then people can just jump on as they join. It's hard, I'm bouncing around, but so one thing you might notice is that I'm not Stu. I'm Bethany Grant. I was Bethany Foch in college in class of 93. So not only am I not Stu, I'm not even in the right reunion year. So I'm completely the wrong person. But the reason I drew the short straw today is that I'm the newest member to the MIT CAA board. And so I guess this is their form of hazing. And so I'm your host today, but I think you guys are going to do most of the talking, and I'll walk you through the agenda. So I also want to introduce Jocelyn Sang. So Jocelyn, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, my partner in crime here today.
Hi, welcome everyone. We've enjoyed a year of virtual events in lieu of our more traditional activities. This is our second time as the reunion row virtually, and we hope actually for next fall ahead of the Charles Regatta to have a reception in person. But today we're happy to have a nice lineup, which Bethany's about to entail. Anyway, enjoy the hour. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I'm hoping we're back in person next year too, because this doesn't compare to getting in a boat with our.
You don't get wet when you're rowing virtually.
That's true. That's true. You stay dry. And it's not as hot today in Boston is 90 degrees. So we saved ourselves some heat stroke probably as well. I think what we'll do to kick off, we have some things planned, including a video of the new boathouse, which is very exciting, some photos and video of the new boathouse, and some stories from those of you who volunteered to tell a story. But maybe we'll kick off with just a couple quick poll questions just to get people's memories of their time at MIT flowing. First of all, and I think that Amy is going to coordinate the answers. I don't know how it works, Amy, if you pop something up, but I'll just ask and then hope it all goes smoothly. First question, how many years did you row in college? So there you go.
And just an age, or does that include scholar?
Oh, you get to decide. Free form. Choose your own adventure here. And second question is, have you rowed since college? So then, Amy, how does it work when everybody submits? Do we get to see data?
I think so. I can see it. I guess I didn't realize not everybody had the pleasure of seeing the.
Could you share real quick?
Yeah. So right now, have you rowed after college? We have 82% of the votes cast, and 76 people have rowed after college, and only 23% have not.
Nice.
So pretty good numbers.
Nice. And did you get the one about?
See, oh, there we go.
Right, oh, they do pop up. Okay. All right. All right. So awesome. So we have a lot of rowers here. I think what we're going to do, oh, and it pops up with 3/4 of you rowed for 4 years. So these are the hardcore rowers.
This is a self-selected group, though.
Right.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. Why would we be here if we didn't still love rowing? So we're going to jump into one initial story from Gary Smith. Gary has a commitment, so we want to get his story out before we lose him. So wherever you are, Gary, please jump in. And Jocelyn, are you ready? Yeah, Jocelyn's going to share pictures.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this story is about from 1979, and again, and I do apologize for having to dash after this, but about 1979. And so the MIT heavyweight crew was doing 2-a-days at Cornell in the week leading up to the IRA National Championship Regatta. One evening after dinner, as we were walking from the dining hall to our residence hall, we proceeded across a footbridge over one of Cornell's very high gorges. As we walked, someone noticed that the bridge kind of rumbled as we walked and said, "This is a pretty light bridge. I bet we could make it move if we jumped." And I said, being course 2, "I wonder if we could hit the harmonic frequency." We had other guys who thought this was a great idea. So the bridge itself was about 100 to 120 feet across, a suspension bridge. You can see nice pictures of it. Thank you, Jocelyn, by the way. It's about 6 feet across or wide with railings on either side. So we went to the center of the bridge and then spread out about 6 feet between each guy, about 12 guys. So we spanned over about half the total bridge length. Kind of waited in the center. I was on the far end of the bridge. John Stenard, our unofficial vice president of fun, was next to me. First, a word about John. He was 6'4", 210, and the runner-up in New England wrestling in the unlimited weight division, meaning he usually wrestled guys a lot heavier than himself. If you needed to scale a building from the outside, say 7 floors up, John was your guy. If you needed a guy who developed his own hybrid language, John was again your guy. And if you needed a fun time, John was definitely your guy. So, but also I've never met a more sincere and dependable guy. John would later become a Navy SEAL officer and set a world age group record on the Concept 2 erg. But at this moment, John was in the center of the fun. We lined up. John said, 3, 2, 1, go. And to be honest, we got off to a bit of a shaky start. But within a few jumps, we were synced, jumping the same height and moving together. When you think of it, we were actually perfectly suited for this endeavor. We were heavy, we were numerous, we were trained to execute in perfect synchronization, and we were psyched about the whole harmonic frequency thing. So we were at that point in our lives when we thought we were bulletproof. We were full of ourselves, having just made the grand finals of the Eastern Sprints just a few weeks before with the young crew. And as we continued to jump, we could feel the bridge vibrate, but it wasn't really increasing in amplitude. So I yelled to John, "Up to on the next, up to now." And he picked up the pace. Everybody's looking at John now. And again, within a few more jumps, we got synced up. After about 5 or so more jumps, you could feel it move. And just a little first, and then a little more, and you could feel it going up and down. And intuitively, we knew to land on the down movement, prepare for launch at the bottom, and then jump after the spring back. We adjusted to the movement of the bridge in sync, kind of like heavyweight synchronized trampoline team. And the bridge began to move a lot, actually. It would fling you up in the air, and you had to be careful not to go too high or your timing would be thrown off. There was whooping, laughing, general hilarity. Around this time, in spite of the amazingly cool feeling, I noticed that while in midair, that I was actually flying about it felt like 2 or 3 feet above the bridge, and the bridge is way up in the air. So let's see. And so a brief image of I think it's the Tacoma Narrows Bridge video that we'd all seen in class, kind of flashed through my mind. Things began to get really slow, and I got actually sincerely frightened. The Tacoma Narrows Bridge video does not end well. And I thought, probably enough fun for now. So I shouted to John, "John." But he was looking the other way at all the other guys and could not hear me due to all the whooping and laughing. I called again, "John, John," but he had his back turned. So now fight or flight is a very real thing. And it turns out in that instance, I was into the flight. So I started to run to the end of the bridge. Only then I noticed that I couldn't time my steps to hit the bridge when, and in fact, you had to hit the bridge when it was at the top of the amplitude, or you're going to miss. And what happened was I stumbled and fell because I wasn't prepared for this amount of movement. So when I got up, I grabbed the railing and started to pull my way across the bridge, kind of like, stairs at the Green Building. And the bridge was flying. I mean, it was probably, you know, I don't know exactly, maybe a foot, maybe 18 inches from top to bottom of the amplitude. Now, when I got close to the end, the amplitude stopped. That has got less, and I kind of, you know, sort of triple jump across, like hit, and I was able to hit the top of the amplitude. I got to the other end, and when I reached the far end, there was a man, maybe about 40 years or so old, straight out of central casting as an engineering professor. Dark rimmed glasses, slick back hair, and he had a briefcase in his hand. He was angry, actually, and he demanded to know, who are those guys? And I said, it's the MIT heavyweight crew team. And he said, then they should know better. And
They probably did.
yeah. And I said, well, rather than continue a conversation, I'm going to try to get them off. So I yelled again, John. And this time John heard me. And when he looked over his shoulder at me, I waved in the most certain terms, no uncertain terms, that he should get off the bridge as quickly as possible. So he stopped immediately and turned, and everyone else did too. And they walked off the bridge just like it was one of those flash mob kind of things. And they walked up the bridge, and this professor-looking guy walked across the bridge the other way, and we lived to tell the tale. So that's my story. Oh, I should mention that that crew then at the IRAs came within about 0.4 seconds of the eventual grand final winner, Brown, in the repechage, but that's a different story. So we had a great time, and that's the story. Little MIT, little engineering and rowing kind of thing together.
And I assume everybody made it off safely. That's the happy.
We did. We made it off safely and lived to tell the tale.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Well, take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
You bet.
Great story. Okay, I think we're going to jump right into the coach's intro if Tony's here. Is Tony here? Because
Yeah, he waved.
Great. And then Amy will share the video, Tony, as soon as you're ready for it.
Yeah, thanks. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here. It's great to see so many people with a continued interest in the crew program, and I recognize some of you younger folks. As I can't believe you guys. It's been 5 years, I assume, or you wouldn't be here. It's hard to believe. Thanks also to Bethany and the MIT Crew Alumni Association. You know, you guys have not stopped working at all. You know, during the pandemic, it's been really great to work with you and see all the stuff that you've done. So you've asked me to just say a few words about the video that we're going to show of the new boathouse. And I'll just give you a little background on the renovation process. First thing is that we did our best to provide good photos and good video, but they don't really do the building justice. You have to be in it to appreciate the sense of light and airiness inside, and the great views that you get from so many places in the boathouse. And that's really a testament to our architect's vision, which really worked out great. This is the culmination of a lot of work. We started interviewing architects in the spring of 2014, so more than 7 years ago. And the first round of designs was intended to give us a number of different scales of project to price out. We looked at expanding the building up, expanding the building out, or rather downstream. And all of the designs that involved expansion were prohibitively expensive. One was over $30 million. Just the next size up from what we did was over $30 million. And there were prohibitive permitting issues too. We would have needed a act of the Massachusetts legislature to expand the part that we lease from the state. So anyway, they wound up staying within the current footprint. which is why the building looks very, very similar from the outdoors to before the renovation. The interior use of space is much more efficient. So we did pick up a lot of usable space. We moved out, the crew program moved out in November 2019. And then we moved back in this March 2021. So the program was homeless for about a year and a half. The first winter we trained in the Z Center in the MAC court, which is a multi-use space on the second floor. That spring, so last spring, we built a full outdoor rowing facility at Magazine Beach, which you probably remember where that is. If you don't, if you're racing in the head of the Charles and you go across the starting line, you immediately take a big turn to the coxswain's right, and that's Magazine Beach, that big turn before Riverside Boat Club. We built a 120-foot dock. We had boat racks for all our boats. There was fencing, there was landscaping involved, storage facilities. And we used it twice, and then they closed the campus because of COVID, and we had to get everybody back to disassemble it and take it apart. So that was, I don't know what that was. That was unusual. And then last fall, that spring, of course, the campus was closed entirely. Last fall, it was open to seniors only. So there was no rowing done. This spring, the campus was open to sophomore, juniors, and seniors, pardon me, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. There were a lot of restrictions on the returning students. So a lot of them opted not to return and did their school virtually. So we had, on the heavyweight team, we had a little less than half the guys back. And I think that was pretty normal across all the crew squads. We were also limited to rowing 3 days a week and rowing in singles. We rented a fleet of singles so that we could do that. On the plus side, we were back at it. We had fun. We taught every athlete in the program who was on campus to row a single, which, was obviously a great skill for teaching a boat feel. But also it's the part of our sport that is a lifetime sport or can be a lifetime sport. So my hope is that we have a bunch of rowers who will, row for decades. And it'll be, because they'll have the skill that we learned this spring. So that's the silver lining. The bummer is that almost all of our competitors were in team boats competing this spring. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for us. I don't see any way that we haven't, been set back competitively entering next fall. But we'll get back up to speed pretty fast. I think we have this beautiful facility. The squads are already large. A lot of people deferred, took time off. So I'm gonna have almost 40 guys on my team when we get back, and I think the others are in a similar situation. So we'll get at it pretty fast. It'll be a temporary setback, and there were more important things in the last year and a half than keeping your crew tuned up as high as possible. Within the boathouse, the big changes that you'd see if you could go in, well, you wouldn't recognize it if you could go in. The entire floor plan is different. It's a little, the first time I went in, it was when they were building it, was very disorienting. But just in general terms, that we have 3 large exercise rooms. We just call them 1, 2, and 3, although I think we have named donors for them. So eventually they'll have names attached. Each one was designed to hold 25 ergometers, but in practice, numbers 1 and 2, and what's on the screen right here is exercise room 1. They'll hold over 30 ergs plus some bikes. And pretty comfortably. And then exercise room 3, that's another picture of number 1. Exercise room 3 will hold 20 something ergs because we've dedicated about a third of it to a weightlifting area. And there's 4 power racks in there that I think are also, I know that they're also in the video. You'll see it's a beautiful weightlifting facility. So we have a lot more ergometers usable on the first floor than ever before. And of course, if for some reason we need more than that, which is hard for me to picture, we still have the boat bays downstairs, and we can erg down there the way we've always done. The locker rooms are now divided equally between men and women, which was not the case before. The boathouse is built, as you probably know, is this a men's only facility. And when women's rowing was added, they divided the locker rooms, but not equally. And now they're equal. The balcony wraps around the western side of the boathouse now. So that's the upstream side facing towards Boston University, or the starting line at the head of the Charles. And it's a big wide balcony. It's beautiful. As you can see right through the railing, it's got a teak rail, and people can stand there and cheer for the crews as they land or launch. It's just really nice. And at the end of that balcony, there's now a permanent stair that goes right down to the seawall. So we no longer have to raise and hoist and lower a temporary ramp to get boats and other stuff up and down. There's a permanent stair, and there's a big sliding security gate that prevents people from using the permanent stair to get in, when they're not supposed to. Those are the big changes. As I said, the design is totally different. The layout is totally different. And it's beautiful. So that's what I've got to say. In the fall of 2021, we've been told to expect full programming. We're going to be back at it as far as the university has told us, just like normal, with no masks. And to answer what, Bethany's question, I sincerely believe we are going to be having an alumni, in-person alumni banquet in the fall. I really think that's going to happen. So yeah, that's it. I'll stop talking. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Great, thanks, Coach. So, Amy, can you kick that off? Great. And maybe, Tony, if there's anything you want to say while we're getting the tour, feel free to jump in. That is, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I had to watch that a couple times to orient myself, because I think now the coaches' offices are on the other side of the boathouse. And so your view is different, but you get that wide expanse when you're erging. Is that right, Tony?
That's right. The coach's office is where the lounge used to be. And exercise room 1 is a lot of space, but included in it is where the coach's office used to be. There are a couple questions in the chat. And I also wanted to point, it's probably obvious, but when you saw those spaces, you saw that there was electrical tape on the floor and the ergs were, very far apart. That's all a COVID distancing thing. That'll, God willing, be gone in the fall, and we'll have them lined up as usual. So anyways, we have two questions. Carrick asked, is the tank gone? And the answer is yeah, the tank was decommissioned by the state environmental regulatory authorities. I've lost touch or lost track. I mean, it's been at least 5 years, maybe 6 years since we were able to use the tank, maybe even longer. I think time is accelerating. And so a few years ago, we floored it over. It was still there. We just put a floor over it and gym flooring on top of that and had a second erg room in there. And interestingly, there are some new boathouses that include tanks, but more and more they're not. I think with Harvard's renovation, they're taking out at least one tank. And the basic reason is you can train a lot more people in less space, just with an empty room than you can with a tank. Our tank had 8 rowing stations, and we were able to get, I'm forgetting, but it was like 25 or more ergometers in the same space. So the tank is gone. Stephen asks, I remember having to fill out logbooks of my workouts and enjoying how things progressed as I learned the sport. How has that changed for you as a coach and for the rowers? Is it all automatically loaded into a cloud-based logbook? No, we do not have a cloud-based logbook. I think when we train together as a team, the coaches track that according to their own way. I have a spreadsheet. I'm sure everyone does their own thing. If you're asking about on-own workouts or a personal logbook, I'm sure some guys keep them. I know a lot of guys keep that information on their phone. This is probably more detailed than you want, but when we're apart, when the athletes are training on their own over the summer or during COVID, we're actually not allowed to know what they did. That's considered a rules violation. So we recommend workouts, but they actually cannot report back that information to us. So I don't know. I hope they're working out. Can't make them prove it. Yeah. So those are the questions.
Great. I think there's just a couple other comments. Learn to row single. I think we all went out in the Pinerts at the end of our senior year with Maureen. I remember distinctly because I flipped more than once when I did that. So I see some head nods. Yeah, maybe now I don't flip my single, but I think maybe your guys will have a head up on that. All right, so let's keep moving on the agenda. That was amazing. Unless anybody has any other questions for Coach, we will move on. So I had a couple poll questions that we're going to run through real quick. One is, when was the last time you were in the MIT Boathouse? Will that pop up, Amy? I hope the answer is other, because you guys have been to other, unless they're new classes, other reunion rows you've been to. And then last time you were on an erg. When I saw the video, I still don't like erging, but it's a nice place. It's a nice view out those windows. All right, good. So about half of you had your last time in the boathouse was a reunion row, so that's good, and hopefully there will be others soon. All right. Okay. Maybe we'll jump into the stories. I know we have a few, so I want to make sure there's time for those. First, Bob Marshall. Bob, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. Take it away.
So my story is called Windsor Boat Club. I'm from the class of 71. The beginning of 1970 was an exciting time for lightweight oarsmen. FISA, the International Rowing Organization, was holding a world championship in North America, practically in our backyard in St. Catharines, Ontario. For the first time ever, this world championship would include an exhibition lightweight 80s. That meant a chance for me, a little guy, you wouldn't think though, to row in the world championships, or not. No schools in our region seemed interested in sponsoring a team. MIT certainly did not. Then a coach in the Detroit area sent a letter to most every rowing college in the East. This coach promised a team for the lightweight race, training, housing, and a summer job. No one I talked to at MIT Rowing World knew anything about him, but I took a chance and signed up. The prospect of a guaranteed summer job was a big part of the draw. This coach was Canadian and lived in Windsor. Saying this was a shoestring operation would be an overstatement. We had no boathouse, no locker room, no weight room. We launched off a dock into a canal that fed the Detroit River. From our regatta in Detroit on the US side of the river, we rowed across the international border and back after the race. The incident of my story took place at the US National Rowing Championships. Let's call the US Nationals, it's an open race. Though all the oarsmen, the cocks, and my team were American, we were nominally a Canadian crew. I believe this event took place in Princeton, New Jersey. We were competing in the lightweight 8. The day before our qualifying race, we were on the course for a training row. With so many boats rowing on the course, the coaches' boats were not allowed. We were on our own. After loosening up, we were at the start of the course, ready for training. Our coach ordered. As our cocks were about to start us, another boat came up. They seemed intent on the same thing, a race start drill. After conferring with our stroke, our cocks called out the other boat, asking if they would want to brush with us. They didn't laugh, but it was laughable. The other boat was a New Zealand national team 8, here for North America early for the World Championships. Part of their training included competing in US Nationals. They looked the part of a boatload of big, strong athletes. If you've got, Joyce, and if you've got the picture now, that's now the time. They looked the part of a big, strong, yeah. We were a scraggly, there we go. We were a scraggly group with long hairs, mustaches, and beards. It was like a rusty Volkswagen Beetle showed up at International Speedway and challenged an Indy car to a race. The New Zealand cocks took over right away. They were planning on doing a start at 500 meters. Our cocks replied, we were only planning to do 50 strokes. It's almost the same distance. The New Zealand cocks started us. You know how it is to start. Lots of motion and effort to get the boat moving. On the 4th or 5th stroke, I think I overfeathered. Next thing I know, I was out of the boat, in the water, skipping my back on the keel and crashing my arm near the shoulder into the skag underneath the coxswain. This is why they make you take the small boat test, swim test, before you join the team. The guys in my boat stopped rowing after I was ejected, but I still had to swim back to the boat and climb back in. Remember, there were no coaches' boats. Once I got in and squared away, we paddled down the course and pulled alongside the other boat, resting from their drill. Their cocks was ready to go again, and somehow our cocks agreed. The worst part of my entire ordeal was what their cocks said as we were lining up for another go. Everyone else in both boats had seen my ejection, except their cocks. Of course, he was looking the wrong direction. Just before he started, us again, the cocks said to us, mostly to me, in his New Zealand accent, would you mind doing that again? I didn't quite catch it. I managed to stay in the boat the second time, though I think I barely touched the water for the first few strokes. The New Zealand boat finished 3rd in the World Championships that year. Most of the same guys won the 8 race in the 72 Olympics. The Windsor boat club lightweight 8, without me, because I was a spare for that race, was 2nd in the petite finals in the World Championships. Mostly because 2 other boats failed to make the finals, had scratched, and we were the last one in the petite finals. I didn't even get to row the regatta, but sports is a journey and not a destination.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing. Does anybody have any thoughts for Bob before we moved on to the next? Anybody else race the New Zealand national team? No.
They were at the IRAs practicing when we were there one year.
Funny.
Those guys look very huge compared to the people who were in my boat.
They look huge compared to the people at the IRAs.
All right. So next up is Carrick. Carrick, where are you? Take it away.
Mine is kind of my personal story. although I do have a boathouse, a quick boathouse tank story. One of the boatmen told me that when they first had the tank and opened the boathouse and they fired it up, and Jack Fraley and all these other MIT luminaries were there, and they was going full blast. And when they shut it off, they basically had a waterfall that came down the steps because they hadn't really accounted for the energy that had to be absorbed when they were moving all that water. So he said that was some design changes had to be made with the tank. So it's always had kind of a checkered history. I started rowing as a freshman. I was a kid from Missouri Ozarks. Fraser Walsh, I think, wrote a letter to every kid who was over 6 feet and anyone who's played sports, because I was not over 6 feet. And we had 4 boats my freshman year, and I think that they were boated by size, and I was probably in the 4th boat. I was pretty stubborn. I held out. I think by the spring season, we basically had 2 boats. I desperately wanted to be seat raced against one of the big guys in the first boat because I thought I could beat him. And before the sprints or before the end of the season, I actually got to seat race, won my seat race, made the first boat my freshman year. Stuck it out. My sophomore year, I was in the JV. My freshman year, actually, our JV won the IRAs and went to Henley. So we and our varsity boat was picked to win the IRAs, but they came in second. JV season was an Olympic year, so 2 of the guys in the boats were actually on the U.S. Olympic team. I don't remember. We actually broke up the JV boat for the IRAs, so I rode in a pair at the IRAs my sophomore year. My junior year, and you can throw up the picture again, I was battling with a younger, bigger guy to make the team. But again, I'm kind of stubborn and persisted. And here's our boat. This is the boat my junior year in 1977. So the stroke is John Everett, who was in the Olympic 8. He also won a world championship. Behind him is Gary Pianadosi, who was in the straight 4. He's a boat maker. Tom Sawyer, who's behind him, I believe was actually made the national lightweight team. The other 3 guys were on the JV that went to the IRAs, and then there's me and Bow. So I was kind of the runt.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that, you know, we had an amazing season, but we didn't. Although we had a lot of adventures, including some at Cornell involving a skinny dipping water hole that Gary and John knew about, that they introduced us to. The remark being made by some of the women there, you guys are in a lot better shape than most of the guys who come here, which I always regard as a compliment, especially being at MIT. We don't usually get complimented on our physiques. My senior year, I was elected the captain. During our spring break season, I came down with mono, so I got the appellation Captain Mono, I think, which was a variation of Captain Nemo. But I stuck it out. I got the most inspirational oarsman award. I still remember Pete Holland coming to me and saying, "Carrick, you're the reason we have this program. You stuck it out for 4 years. You've become the captain. You've become the most inspirational oarsman. These young guys look up to you." And I still keep those awards on my desk at work. I have ever since I got them. And I just think it's what the program's all about. That's my story.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think you put it very well, and a lot of us are here because rowing has touched us in kind of the same way. So thanks, Carrick. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, next up, and I'm going to keep this moving because the stories are great, and I know we have a hard stop to kick us off a few minutes after 5. So next up is Bill Nelson.
Hi, I have a couple of memories that I want to share with you. The first one is more or less a story. One fall, when we showed up on the heavyweight squad for practicing, I'm not sure whether it was my sophomore or junior year, we discovered that Jack Fraley had a new idea. He had put strain gauges on each of the oarlocks of the 8 oars and had the EE department build an integrating device that would integrate the force that was applied each time you made a stroke on your oarlock and sum it up to the end of the practice. Of course, these weren't in any sort of appropriate units. You couldn't tell how much work was there, but you could look at the 8 sums at the end of the practice and rank the 8 rowers from the one that had the largest number to the one that had the smallest number. And basically, I would say most of the rowers weren't very happy with that, but being MIT graduates or students at that time, we figured out maybe a way around it. What we learned was that after every 5 or 6 strokes, you could just pull lightly on one and you could still get into the high end of those 8 numbers at the end of the practice, but rest on, say, every 6th stroke. And we were real happy with that and thought it was working great until a couple of weeks later, Jack showed up with a chart recorder hooked up onto it with 8 little things that made marks on the paper, and they were just little bumps, but he could look at it and he could see every stroke that if one of the 8 people didn't have a bump on his line, he wasn't pulling them. And so I guess Jack finally won on his way of figuring out quantitatively who was pulling hardest, though it only lasted that 1 year. It never came back, but I remember that year of practicing when we were all being measured with strain gauges, and I've never forgot that. There are a couple of other experiences that stick in my memory. We were rowing in the middle of the Charles River Basin. It was in the fall. It was a fall practice, sort of late in the fall. So it got dark before 5 o'clock. So we were out there practicing from 5 to 7. It was pitch black. And we were moving at a good clip right down the center of the basin. And all of a sudden, the world disappeared. It was the big blackout in the fall of the early 60s. Boston disappeared, Cambridge disappeared, all the lights went away. And for a minute or so, it was extremely hard to tell what direction was up and what direction was down and how to balance the boat. And after about a minute and a half, our eyes acclimatized to the dark. You could tell from the streetlights on Memorial Drive and Storrow Drive roughly what was level. And that really stuck in my mind as well. The third time was, it was February. We were out early practice. The ice had broken on the river really quick. We were right in front of Riverside Boathouse and we hit an iceberg. Of course, back in those days, the early 60s, all the boats were 1/8 inch thick mahogany. So it stove the front 4 or 5 feet of the boat in. And since we were moving at a good clip, we just went forward and the water came rushing in. And we got wet. It was really, really cold water. So being smart, we all decided to stay dry to stand up, and because the water was about in our waist. And all that did was push the boat down, and we stayed waist deep standing in the boat. Luckily, a BU launch was going by in the other direction at that time. He quickly swerved around, came alongside, and we each jumped on it. It was a cold trip back to the boathouse. So those are sort of the 3 memories I remember the most, but I think I probably should end with a couple of race stories since people like those. I essentially rode in the JV. A couple of times when I was working real hard, I'd be moved up to the varsity for a race. And sometimes when I guess I was slacking off, I'd be moved down into the 3rd boat. And it was in the spring at the end of my junior year, I had been demoted down to the 3rd boat just before we had the Harvard race. And it turned out it was very, very lucky for me, because while Harvard, Harry Parker's heavyweights beat the varsity and beat the JV, we beat Harvard's third boat. They absolutely couldn't believe it and was suggesting that maybe we were this JV and not the third boat. But it turned out everybody in that third boat was the shortest member of the team. When all the teams were standing on the dock, you could see that the whole third boat was 6 inches shorter than the MIT JV and the MIT varsity. So Harvard said, okay, we're a real third boat, but they said we shouldn't have beat them. So they challenged us for the next week to have a second race on the same course right there on the Charles. And we said, okay. So we had a second race the following week, and we beat them a second time. So I ended up with 2 Harvard shirts simply because I got demoted to the third boat for that week and then the second week afterwards. So those were sort of the most prominent memories I remember. I guess got another minute, I could add other 2. I clearly remember practicing up at Dartmouth the week after graduation before going to the IRA. And the Dartmouth students had left, Hanover had closed down. And I remember what was so strange about it, it was so empty in the town and so boring up there for a week that the actual highlight of the week were the morning and afternoon practices on the water, because there was absolutely nothing else to do. I guess the end I remember with, again, I usually rode in the JV. So I remember the 3 years at the Eastern Sprints on Lake Quinsigamon. And we always seemed to win our first heat. And so I got enough shirts every summer to wear on the beach and cause, the young ladies to come up and say, oh, do you go to Yale or do you go to Harvard or something? Usually it was Dartmouth, the BU. And so I always got a nice shirt collection because we win our heats at the sprints, but we never seemed to do very well in the finals at all. And I think I've probably used most of my time, so I'll leave it with those 5 memories.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill. That was great. I think maybe we should have had a poll. I don't know that, has anyone else beat Harvard? Does anyone else have a Harvard shirt? That's pretty impressive. I know I don't. Okay, so someone else. Freshman Heavy in the chat. Freshman Heavy boat beat Harvard in our first meeting in the fall of 1959. Excellent.
Okay, 59. If it was my junior year, it would have been 65. So there's a big gap there.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Bill. I think we're moving to Linda Iqbal. Linda, are you here?
There we go.
Jump in. Great.
So I was asked to talk a little bit about the Iqbal rowing family, but I thought I would start off with where the Iqbal rowing family started, which was at MIT. And Essen and I met as freshmen. We both lived on Burton 1. And Essen started rowing as a freshman, and we started dating as freshmen. And he introduced me to the sport of rowing, and he took me to the tank in the boathouse the summer after our freshman year, taught me to row in the tank, took me out and taught me to row in the double. And then the class day came along. And so sophomore year class day, Burton 1, we got together at an 8 for class day. And I don't know if they still have class day or if everybody knows about it, but you had 2 to 4 experienced rowers and the rest of the 8 was made up of inexperienced rowers. And so when I did that sophomore year, I was the only female in the boat. And I was really impressed with how we did because we made finals and we ended up finishing 5th, but we were the highest finishing non-frat team and the highest finishing co-ed team. So I was very impressed with how well I rowed. And then the next year came along, class day, when I was a junior. And that year we had more people interested in being in the boat than there were seats available. And so somehow I lost my seat to a overweight beer drinking guy. And I was really angry and pissed off. And I said, I'll show them, whoever decided not to put me in the boat, and I will join the team. So I did. And so I joined the fall of my junior year, and I rowed junior year and senior year. So Essel and I continued dating all through college, and we got married. And after we got married, we wanted to stay involved in rowing. And so Essen he pretty much got drafted to coach Washington University in St. Louis, to coach the team they were starting. And so he was coaching, and he and I would collaborate and try to figure out, how do we coach? How do we train a team? What drills do we do? And we kind of just felt it out together. And so we fell in love with coaching, and I'll go to my next picture here. And so we started, give me my next slide. So we were coaching when our first child was born. And so he got dragged to rowing practice, and he learned how to copy his dad. So, and this is Jeff. Jeff Iqbal turned into Essen 2.0. I say he's the improved version of my husband. So Jeff ended up going to MIT also. And, oh, skip that one, that's the daughter. So Jeff rowed at MIT also. He also was course 16, just like his dad. They happened to have the same thesis advisor. And he now coaches rowing now that he is graduated and working for Boeing, just like Essen did. Jeff coaches high school kids as well. And then our daughter came along while we were still coaching. This is when we went to Canadian Henley. And our daughter rowed in high school. She is a little bit of a rebel because she ended up not going to MIT like the rest of the family. She ended up coxing for Yale. And after she graduated from Yale, she's come back home and she's done some coaching with the family as well. So all four of us are still very actively involved in rowing. And there's our two kids went out rowing on Lake Washington when we were visiting Jeff up in Seattle. There's Jeff coaching his team up in Seattle. And just a little plug for Essen. So we have a young lady who is going to be representing Uganda in the Olympics in Tokyo next month. So she contacted us, wanted help training, didn't have any equipment, didn't have any coaches. So so really Essen has been the one who has been coaching her for the last year and a half. And he's going to be going to Tokyo with her and coaching her there. So, and the whole rowing family all started back in MIT. Oh, yeah, there's us at our reunion row.
That's us now.
Yes.
That is a fantastic story. That is amazing that you're going. Be safe. I know that there's some controversy there, but it should be fantastic. Fantastic. So what year was this? What reunion row was this?
I believe, what year do you think that was? It would have been.
It looks like you have some folks. Is that
2000?
Are your kids in there with you?
Jocelyn is there in the center, and there's Scott Cosby.
2009.
2014.
Awesome. Those days will happen again. Well, good luck to her. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Okay, I think we'll keep moving. I learned we do have a few extra minutes. We're not going to get kicked off quite so quickly, so we can finish the stories. So Dave Weiss, are you ready? Can I unmute you? Dave, you're muted still. Amy or Moana, can you help?
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the class of 1952. So in high school, I was in Albany, New York. Although 6'4", I was just a terrible athlete. I flunked out of basketball completely. When I got to MIT and at that height, they said, "Well, Dave, you got to go out for crew." So I went out for crew, and at that time, I was selected for the freshman lightweight crew by Chuck Jackson, who was the coach at that time. Within a month, I gained enough weight, so I got promoted to the freshman first crew. And at 6'4", I was the shortest member of that crew. We had a good crew. Our very first race was against Harvard on the Charles, and we lost that race to Harvard by 1/10 of a second. And the crew really never recovered from that. My career from there on was primarily rowing on the JV, but that really kept me going at MIT. It was important to me. The daily walks down to the boathouse and exercise every day, it was just what I needed. As a senior, finally, I was designated as a spare for the final varsity race being held in Syracuse. And on the morning of the race, our number 4 oarsman passed out, and I was called to sub. No, we didn't win that race, but I earned my varsity letter. And I value that varsity letter, I think, more today than ever, even maybe more than my diploma. And on balance, rowing on the crew was probably the most prized experience of my life as I look back on it. That's my short story.
Excellent. Great picture. And
I'm the second one from the left. I was in this picture. Okay. I was number 7.
Excellent. So it was the whole boat was pretty tall.
Yes.
And can you pull that up again, Jocelyn? Because I was trying to figure out what buildings were in the background.
BU.
Yes, that's BU. Yes. That was the old boathouse.
Wow.
In the 60s and 50s, we rode out of the boathouse that's now the BU boathouse.
So is it looking at Cambridge? Or looking at
yes, yes. The river is right behind us, and Cambridge is on the other side. No, not Cambridge. We're looking at
Boston.
Cambridge is behind you.
Yes.
Right.
There may be a church. There may be a church at BU.
You're looking at the Boston side behind them.
Yes.
Completely different.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.
Great story. I'm glad you found rowing. So it's right at 5. If people can stay on, we could do a quick breakout session with your years, so you have a chance to connect. That was the plan. I know we've gone a little over. So why don't we try that? And if people can stay on and just spend a few minutes, we can shorten it to kind of somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. And are we assigning or people choosing? How is it working? What did we decide?
I'm going to leave if you'll excuse me.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
People can select their breakout rooms based on their year.
Okay.
So Moana, do you want to go ahead and share the breakout rooms?
Opening all rooms now. Here we go.
I don't think we many of us understood what an honor it was to be coached by Jack Fraley.
Yeah.
You know, who he really was in terms of rowing.
Until I
And,
went to his funeral at the reunion 5 years ago,
right,
the memorial, yeah.
my, when we had home races, my junior year, Vance Smith was captain and his fraternity house was right across the street. And we used to have our pre-race meal at the fraternity house, and Jack cooked blueberry pancakes for us.
I have a little story about Jack Fraley at the end. I've been rowing and belong to a rowing club on Lake Winsigamen for the last 11 years. And I go out every other morning and row down the lake and back. And when Jack was living there in his retirement home, right in the shore of the lake, I would go by his house, his condominium there every morning. Sometimes I used to look and think he was either out on the grass or sitting out on the porch, but I was never quite sure if he was there or not because the building was back a little way from the water. But I definitely used to row by him every other morning for several years while he was living there.
Nice. Nice. I was never coached by him, but I did in my first stint on the board in the, I don't know, 2000s. I worked with him, and what a wonderful person. Yeah.
I was a little unsure about his transition from coaching heavyweights to lightweights. I do remember him standing there giving a pre-workout discussion, and he was munching on a chocolate eclair. And
We weren't doing that.
and we were starving.
One thing I caught from my story is that I liked Windsor except for one thing. I was hungry the entire time. The weight limit for the international race was 67.5 kilograms, which is about 6 or 8 pounds less than I weighed at for most of my races when I was at MIT.
Well, our year, what part of the manager's job was, after we weighed in, we got fribbles. The first time they called one of the branches and said, I want 40 fribbles, they thought it was a joke and didn't fill the order until they showed up and said, where are our 40 fribbles? And that was sort of a tradition right after the boat made weight.
Gary, what's a fribble?
A milkshake.
A milkshake from Friendly's
Fribble.
back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, okay.
I think you can still get them.
I thought they switched to something called the awful after that.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. That's the new one. Yeah. Fribble was a name that the Newport Creamery used when they went into Rhode Island. They couldn't use that name, so they changed it and became awful. You're right. Dad, did you know that Jack started out as a lightweight coach?
Did not know that.
Yes.
He
switched over to heavyweight just a few years before I was a freshman.
Right.
Well,
Bill, I thought that the boats were made of Western red cedar.
Your boat was made of Western red cedar?
Yeah,
The old wood boats.
the Pococks were, yeah.
Bill said mahogany. I thought it was Western red cedar.
That was one of the questions on the polls that we didn't get to. I think it was probably a few years old by the time I wrote it, the white whale.
Yeah.
You wrote what?
Both of those woods were used. My father was a cabinet maker and a patent maker, and I spent my years in high school, after high school, working in his woodworking shop. So I used to go in and talk with the boatsmen in the repair place because I just loved the smell of the different woods. And since I had worked with the stuff, they were willing to talk to me about details of how they fixed them. And so both woods were used. Though I do believe the Pococks were not mahogany.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember one of the guys' name was Joe. I don't remember what the other guy.
Right. Bud, I think it was.
Okay.
Well, in the late 60s, early 70s, Roy was the
Roy.
Roy was the other one.
head of
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, Roy handled the outboards and Joe did the woodwork.
Speaking of Pococks reminds me of Washington, and I had a younger cousin who rowed for the University of Washington. And one of my memories is that he used to insist for a while that he was a much better oarsman because he had rowed under Dick Erickson. And so finally one time I couldn't stand it anymore, and I pointed out that I had learned to row from Dick Erickson since he was the freshman coach in my freshman year at MIT. So he couldn't say anything about who was the best oarsman.
Well, that reminds me, I got a lot of big kick out of reading Boys in the Boat about the 36 Washington crew.
Yeah.
And both that they, had Pocock shells, but one of the guys in the boat was I forget his first name, McMillan, who then became an MIT coach. And that was one of the boats we rowed was the McMillan.
Uh-huh.
Right. That's right.
That's right. I remember that.
That's right. Well, you guys are doing my job for me. I think we have some people from other years, so 80s or 60s. Do you guys have any highlights from your breakout session you want to share? Is that all we have?
We just got reacquainted, really.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's fine too. That's fine too.
Something you'd like us to set up? Was this something we should organize, breakout by decade as an MIT CAA friend, or do you think you would pursue that independently?
Well, it is vaguely similar to when we used to get together physically for a reunion rows and would put boats together from the people from the same decade. So in that sense, it is slightly similar.
Yeah.
Okay, and hopefully next year we'll do that. Okay, sounds
Would
good.
be nice. Yep. And we're talking about for our class, maybe since we didn't get to do a real reunion row this year, if they do it next year, maybe we'll try to put a boat together, even though it's not our reunion year.
Yeah.
But that's been done in the past too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to tell you, we might move away from racing at reunion row. We are thinking about just going out for a combined practice. So
okay.
We want to race.
Well, we could send out a survey.
Even if the two boats are, even if it's equivalent to two boats, two guys, toddlers crawling, we want to race.
Yeah, especially because I'm finally at the place where the handicap helps. So I want to race now.
That's right. We need those handicaps.
We do need those handicaps.
I think I'm in the class of 67. I think at our 45th, we won that race, and a lot of it had to do with the handicap.
Yep.
Well, I rode with 73 in the 3 years ago in their reunion, and for me the best part of it was that my son and his family live in Boston, and my grandson was actually there at the boathouses, and we did win that race. So and he calls me Opa, and there's a movie that my son took, and you can hear my grandson go, "Way to go, Opa!" A great moment.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted to share one or two pictures. I had a picture that you guys might appreciate before we leave. One is, oops,
That's a tank. It's full.
The tanks. So all of us, the women's team, I think this is either 92 or 93. I think it's 93. There's me and all of us lining in the tank. So that was fun.
I've never seen a 20 before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was fun. And then the best part about it is our coxswains doing a little bit of a, whatever that was at the time, a rap stance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I think I had a couple reunion rows, but this one, I just wanted to bring up maybe as a little bit of a closer. And I think Jocelyn, you're here.
Yes.
Yep. So we pulled together a reunion row a couple years ago in memoriam. And so one of my teammates contracted breast cancer and died. And we went out and pulled together. I think were only, I don't know how to cycle through all of these, but I think there were only 4 of us who, it's not the right picture. Nope, that's a different picture. Anyways.
If you hit the right or left.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, there we are. Yep, there were only 4 of us from the team. So this is Andrea Jensen, who's not here tonight, but is also on the board with us. Tracy Adams, Tina Haminantila, it's a mouthful, and me. And then we got some other volunteers to join us, including Jocelyn. And the one picture is not in order somehow, but let me pull it up.
Excuse me, on that
yeah.
last picture, is it Coxon over on the right?
Let me see. Let me see. Oops, these are all.
Is that the Coxon over on the?
That's Eric. What's Eric's last name? So he rowed in college also. His wife was a teammate of mine. So he jumped in. She did not make it to reunion that year. So he jumped in with us. Yeah. But I wanted to just pull up this picture. So we went out and we went for a row, and Holly was out there coaching us, and it was a beautiful flat day, and we stood up in the boat and did a little quiet moment for Victoria, and it was just gorgeous, and I just wanted to share that picture with you guys. So
Wow.
You're very courageous.
I know I never did it in college, and apparently it's a thing, and we didn't flip, but it felt like we might, and it was just amazing. It was an amazing.
Is that the boathouse in McGregor in the
Yes.
background?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we're looking north.
That's
Wow,
right.
great picture, great
That's right.
location.
Yes. Yeah, it was gorgeous. So with that, unless anyone has anything more to share, maybe we'll call this one.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much
It
for
was great to
organizing.
hear all the stories.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having interesting stories to tell.
Great seeing you guys.
Bob, I think this is a picture of your boat, your class day boat.
Yeah, that looks like it. Randy Gregg. Yeah. I remember these guys. That's me right there.
Yep.
Third from the number
Awesome.
6 looks like.
This is class day when you guys were seniors.
Yes, and we had 7 guys who had rowed as varsity, rowed as upperclassmen, and they said, "Oh, these guys have got to win then," and we did.
All right, thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you all.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.